All right, so we're diving into Rich Dad, Poor Dad today. Um, this book has been crazy popular for years, and it's all about like building wealth and, achieving financial freedom. And you set this one in, so you're clearly interested in like leveling up your financial game.
Yeah.
So what I found really interesting is how Robert Kiyosaki, the author, uses his own life as like a case study.
Right.
And he talks about growing up with two father figures, his biological dad, who he calls Poor Dad,
Yeah.
and his best friend's dad, who he calls Rich Dad.
Yeah, and those nicknames are really key to understanding the whole book. Like, it's not that his biological father was literally poor,
Right.
but he had a very different approach to money than Rich Dad. He had, a good education, a stable job, but he still struggled financially.
Yeah.
Rich Dad, on the other hand, was a high school dropout who built a successful business empire.
So he's contrasting these two mindsets, right?
Exactly.
And one of the biggest takeaways is that a traditional education, while important, doesn't necessarily teach you how to be financially successful.
Right, and that's where the concept of the rat race comes in. It's
Right.
this cycle so many of us get trapped in,
Yeah.
going to school, getting a job, working hard, paying bills, but never really getting ahead financially.
Hmm.
Kiyosaki argues that many people spend their lives working for money instead of having their money work for them.
Okay, so how do we break free from this rat race?
Well,
Because I think that's what a lot of people are looking for when they pick up this book.
right.
They want actionable advice.
Well, one of the core principles in the book is this idea: buy assets, not liabilities.
Okay.
Rich Dad drilled that into Kiyosaki from a young age.
Yeah.
But you have to understand what those terms actually mean in this context.
Right.
An asset is something that puts money in your pocket even while you sleep.
So give us some examples.
Sure.
What would be considered an asset in this framework?
Think of a rental property that brings in monthly income, or stocks that pay dividends.
Okay.
Even a business you own that generates profits.
Yeah.
Or these days, digital assets that create income streams. Those are all assets.
And liabilities are the opposite, right?
Exactly.
Things that drain your money.
That new car you financed, that expensive gadget you just had to have,
Yeah.
those are liabilities. They're costing you money every month. Kiyosaki even talks about how seemingly small things like that daily latte habit can be a liability in the long run.
It's true.
Yeah.
He really makes you think about where your money is going, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's not about deprivation, but being mindful of your spending
Right.
and making sure you're investing in things that will actually build wealth.
It's about making your money work as hard as you do.
Okay, but let's get practical.
Okay.
If someone's stuck in the rat race, where do they even begin to acquire assets?
Well, Kiyosaki talks about a few key areas.
Okay.
One is side hustles. Instead of just relying on your 9-to-5 job, find ways to generate extra income on the side. That could be anything from freelancing to starting a small online business.
So it's about creating multiple streams of income.
Yes, and using that extra income to start acquiring assets. Another area he emphasizes is investing.
Like in the stock market.
That's one option.
Okay.
But he also talks about real estate, precious metals, and even more recently, cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
The key is to educate yourself and understand our risks involved before jumping into anything.
So we're seeing this pattern emerge. Education mindset and taking action. Kiyosaki doesn't just say go buy a house.
No.
He wants people to understand the why behind his advice.
Right, and he's very big on continuous learning. Read books, attend seminars, learn from people who are already successful in the areas you're interested in.
So he's basically saying don't just rely on what you learned in school.
Right.
Take ownership of your financial education.
Exactly, and one of the reasons he stresses this is because he believes schools don't adequately prepare people for the real world of finance.
Yeah, he has a whole chapter dedicated to that, doesn't he?
He does.
He argues that traditional education often focuses on preparing people to be employees, not entrepreneurs or investors.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's a major gap because to break free from the rat race, you need a different set of skills and knowledge.
So it's not just about getting a good job.
Right.
It's about building a life where you have more control over your time and your income.
Which brings us to another key concept in Rich Dad, Poor Dad: passive income.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Okay.
What exactly does he mean by passive income?
It's money that works for you even when you're not actively working.
Okay.
It's about building systems or acquiring assets that generate income on autopilot, so to speak.
So rather than trading your time for money, like in a traditional job,
Right.
you're creating income streams that continue to flow whether you're working or not.
Exactly. Imagine waking up every morning knowing that money is coming in regardless of whether you choose to work that day.
That's the dream.
That's the power of passive income.
All right, give us some examples of passive income streams. What did that look like in practice?
Well, we already touched on a few: rental income from properties, dividends from stocks, profits from a business that can run without your constant involvement.
He also talks about royalties from books or music, right?
Yes.
And nowadays, there are all sorts of digital assets that can generate passive income, like online courses or YouTube channels.
That's right. The internet has opened up a whole new world of possibilities for creating passive income streams.
It's really about diversifying your income, isn't it? So
Yes,
you're not relying on just one source.
exactly. It's about creating multiple avenues for money to flow into your life.
But let's be realistic. Building passive income takes time and effort, right?
That's it.
It's not just about sitting back and watching the money roll in.
There's no such thing as truly passive income. Even with rental properties, you have to manage tenants, deal with repairs, and make sure the property is well maintained. With a business, you need to build systems, hire the right people, and make sure things are running smoothly.
So it's more about working smarter, not necessarily harder. About leveraging your time and resources to build something that can eventually generate income with less of your direct involvement.
Precisely. And that's where the importance of mindset comes back into play.
Because you need to be willing to put in the work up front to invest your time and energy into building these systems or acquiring these assets.
And you need to be patient. Building passive income takes time. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
But the rewards can be significant, right?
Absolutely. The potential to create a life where you have more freedom, flexibility, and financial security is a powerful motivator.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
The rat race: assets versus liabilities, passive income.
Right.
But I want to go back to this idea of mindset for a minute.
Okay.
Kiyosaki talks a lot about how our beliefs about money can either limit or empower us.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure, he contrasts the poor dad mindset with the rich dad mindset.
Right.
Poor dad often said things like, "I can't afford that," or "money is the root of all evil."
Yeah.
Rich dad, on the other hand, believed that money was a tool that could be used to create freedom and opportunities.
So it's about shifting your perspective from scarcity to abundance.
Exactly. And he argues that this shift in mindset is crucial for building wealth.
Right.
If you believe you're destined to be poor, you're likely to make decisions that reinforce that belief.
Yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
But if you believe you can achieve financial freedom, you're more likely to take risks, pursue opportunities, and make choices that align with that goal.
Right. And it's not just about thinking positive thoughts, it's about taking action, about educating yourself, about putting in the work to create the life you want.
I think one of the things that makes Rich Dad, Poor Dad so appealing is that it challenges conventional thinking about money. It's not just about working hard and saving every penny.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being strategic, about thinking outside the box, about creating a life where money works for you, not the other way around.
And that's a message that resonates with a lot of people, especially in today's world where the traditional path of going to school, getting a job, and working for 40 years is no longer a guarantee of financial security.
So Rich Dad, Poor Dad offers an alternative.
It does.
It provides a framework for taking control of your financial future and building a life of greater freedom and abundance.
And that's why it continues to be such a popular and influential book, even in decades after it was first published.
Now, I know some people criticize Kiyosaki's ideas,
Mm-hmm.
saying they're oversimplified or unrealistic.
Sure.
What do you say to those critics?
Well, I think it's important to remember that Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a starting point, not an end point.
Okay.
It's meant to spark your interest in personal finance and challenge you to think differently about money.
Yeah.
It's not a step-by-step guide to getting rich quick.
It's more about providing a different perspective, a new way of looking at things.
Exactly, and it's up to each individual to take those ideas and apply them to their own unique situation. Not every piece of advice in the book will be relevant or applicable to everyone.
It's about taking what resonates with you, what sparks your interest, and exploring it further, doing your own research, seeking out mentors, and building your own path to financial success.
And I think that's one of the most valuable things about the book. It encourages you to take ownership of your financial journey.
To become an active participant in creating the life you want rather than a passive observer.
And that's ultimately what financial freedom is all about. It's about having the choices, the options, and the resources to live your life on your own terms.
Well said. Now, Kiyosaki talks a lot about the importance of teaching your kids about money.
Mm-hmm.
Why does he believe that's so crucial?
He argues that financial education should start at home long before kids ever step foot in a classroom.
Okay.
He believes that parents have a responsibility to teach their children about money, to give them the tools and knowledge they need to navigate the financial world.
So it's not just about giving them an allowance or opening a savings account for them.
Right.
It's about having open and honest conversations about money.
Exactly. It's about explaining where money comes from, how to manage it responsibly, and how to make it grow.
And he also encourages parents to be open about their own financial journey, both the successes and the challenges.
Right, because kids learn by example.
Yeah.
If they see their parents struggling with money or avoiding conversations about finances, they're likely to develop unhealthy attitudes and habits around money themselves.
But if they see their parents being responsible with money, making smart financial decisions, and building a secure future, they're more likely to follow in their footsteps.
Exactly. It's about breaking the cycle of financial illiteracy and creating a legacy of financial empowerment for future generations.
So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is not just a book about personal finance. It's also a book about parenting, about education, about creating a better future for ourselves and our children.
And that's what makes it such a compelling and enduring read. And it's interesting how Kiyosaki ties this financial education piece back to the idea of the rat race. He argues that the traditional school system often prepares people to be good employees, not necessarily savvy investors or entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's like we're taught to trade our time for money, but not how to make our money work for us.
Exactly. We learn how to write reports, solve equations, maybe even analyze literature, but not necessarily how to manage a budget, understand investments, or start a business. Those are skills that often have to be learned outside of the traditional classroom.
So what would Rich Dad say to someone who feels stuck in that cycle? Someone who wants to break free from the rat race but doesn't know where to start?
One of the first things he'd emphasize is changing your mindset. He talks about how fear and self-doubt can hold people back from pursuing their financial goals.
Yeah, he often contrasts Poor Dad's mindset of, I can't afford that, with Rich Dad's approach of, how can I afford that? It's about turning a limiting belief into a challenge, a puzzle to solve.
Exactly. It's about shifting from a passive mindset to an active one. Instead of accepting your current financial situation, you start looking for opportunities to improve it.
And one of the ways to do that is by acquiring assets, as we discussed earlier, but that can seem daunting, especially if you're starting with limited resources.
That's where the idea of starting small comes in. Kiyosaki doesn't suggest everyone go out and buy a huge apartment building.
Right.
He encourages people to look for opportunities within their reach, maybe a small rental property or starting a side hustle that can generate extra income.
He talks about the importance of taking calculated risks, right? Not reckless gambles, but stepping outside of your comfort zone and trying new things.
Right, because staying in your comfort zone won't lead to significant growth. You have to be willing to try new things, even if it means making mistakes along the way. He stresses that failure is part of the learning process.
But it's not just about diving in head first. He also emphasizes the importance of doing your research and educating yourself before making any major financial decisions.
Absolutely, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to money. The more you understand about investing, real estate, or entrepreneurship, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions.
So it's about finding that balance between taking action and being informed.
Exactly, and that's where mentorship can be incredibly valuable. Kiyosaki talks about how Rich Dad served as his mentor, guiding him and teaching him about business and investing. He encourages people to find mentors who can share their knowledge and experience.
So it's about surrounding yourself with people who can support you on your financial journey, people who have already achieved the kind of success you're striving for.
And who can help you avoid common pitfalls and mistakes.
Now, one of the things I found really eye-opening in the book was Kiyosaki's discussion of how money is made. He challenges the traditional notion that you have to work hard to earn money.
Right, he argues that the rich don't work for money, they make money work for them.
And that ties back to the idea of passive income, of building assets that generate income even while you sleep.
Exactly. And he talks about how the tax system is often structured in a way that benefits those who understand how to make money work for them.
He gets into some pretty complex topics like corporate structures and tax advantages, but his overall point is that financial literacy is essential for building wealth.
It's not just about knowing how to earn money. It's about understanding how money works, how it flows, how it can be leveraged to create more wealth.
And he argues that this kind of knowledge is often missing from traditional education.
Which is why he stresses the importance of taking ownership of your financial education. Don't just rely on what you learned in school. Read books, attend seminars, find mentors, do your own research.
He's essentially saying don't be afraid to challenge conventional wisdom when it comes to money.
And don't be afraid to think differently, because the path to financial freedom is not always the one that's laid out for you in a textbook.
So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is ultimately about empowering yourself. It's about taking control of your financial future and creating a life of greater freedom and abundance.
And it's about understanding that money is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used to build or destroy. It's up to you to decide how you'll use it.
You know, one of the things that really stuck with me from Rich Dad, Poor Dad was Kiyosaki's story about buying his first rental property.
Yeah.
He talks about how nervous he was,
Mm,
how he almost backed out at the last minute.
right.
But he took the leap, and that one decision set him on the path to financial freedom.
Yeah, that story is a great example of how taking calculated risks can pay off.
Right.
He didn't just blindly jump into real estate. He educated himself, found a mentor, and carefully analyzed the deal before making a move.
Right.
It illustrates that building wealth often requires stepping outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in analysis paralysis, overthinking things, and never actually taking action.
Right.
But Kiyosaki stresses that you learn by
Mm.
by making mistakes and course correcting along the way.
He actually encourages people to embrace failure as part of the process.
Wow.
He views it not as a setback, but as a learning opportunity.
Okay.
That resonates with a lot of successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They often talk about their early failures as being crucial to their eventual success.
So it's not about being afraid to make mistakes.
Right.
It's about learning from them and using those lessons to make better decisions in the future.
Exactly.
He talks about how poor dad would often let fear hold him back,
Yeah.
while rich dad saw opportunities in situations that others might perceive as risky.
Yeah, it's that difference in mindset that can be so powerful.
Right.
If you approach challenges with a sense of curiosity and a willingness to learn, you're more likely to find creative solutions and overcome obstacles.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the what of Rich Dad, Poor Dad,
Mm-hmm.
building assets, passive income, financial education.
Right.
But what about the how?
Okay.
What are some practical steps someone can take to start putting these principles into practice?
Well, as we discussed, Kiyosaki emphasizes starting small.
Right.
You don't have to make a huge investment or quit your job overnight. Maybe it's launching a side hustle to generate some extra income,
Yeah.
or taking a course to learn about real estate investing.
Or even something as simple as creating a budget and tracking your expenses.
Absolutely.
That can be a really eye-opening exercise, helping you identify areas where you can cut back and free up more money to invest.
It's about taking control of your finances and making conscious choices about where your money is going.
Another step could be identifying one area of investing that interests you and starting to learn about it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's stocks, real estate, or even starting a small online business, there are tons of resources available these days.
And don't underestimate the power of networking. Attend industry events, join online forums, connect with people who are already successful in the areas you're interested in.
He talks about how Rich Dad was constantly introducing him to new people and opportunities,
Right.
expanding his network and his knowledge base.
Yeah, mentorship can be such a valuable resource.
It's about surrounding yourself with people who can support you on your journey and who can challenge you to think bigger and bolder.
Exactly.
So taking action, even small steps, is crucial, but so is having the right mindset. How does Kiyosaki suggest people cultivate that rich dad mentality?
One of the key things he emphasizes is changing your self-talk.
Okay.
Pay attention to the language you use when you talk about money. Are you saying things like, I can't afford that, or I'll never be rich?
Yeah, because those kind of limiting beliefs can become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Exactly.
If you don't believe you can achieve something, you're less likely to take the actions necessary to make it happen.
Start replacing those negative thoughts with more empowering ones.
Okay.
Instead of saying, I can't afford that, ask yourself, how can I afford that? Challenge yourself to think creatively and find solutions.
It's about shifting your perspective from scarcity to abundance,
Right.
from seeing limitations to seeing possibilities.
And it's about being willing to take risks and step outside of your comfort zone. As Kiyosaki says, the biggest risk is not taking any risk.
So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is ultimately a call to action.
It is.
It's about taking ownership of your financial future and creating the life you want rather than settling for the one you were given.
It's about understanding that financial freedom is within reach for anyone who is willing to put in the effort and make smart choices.
I think that's an incredibly empowering message. And even if you don't agree with everything Kiyosaki says,
Right.
there's no doubt that this book has the power to spark conversations and challenge conventional thinking about money.
And that in itself can be a catalyst for positive change.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We've covered a lot of ground, from the tale of two dads to the power of passive income and the importance of financial education.
It's been a fascinating exploration of Kiyosaki's philosophy and how it can be applied to achieve financial freedom.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. What's one small step you can take today to start thinking more like Rich Dad and building your path to financial freedom?
It could be anything from reading a financial blog to setting up a budget to researching investment opportunities.
The key is to take action. Even a small step in the right direction can have a ripple effect and lead to significant changes over time.
Remember, financial freedom is not a destination. It's a journey. And every step you take brings you closer to achieving your goals.
So start today. Embrace the principles of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and begin building the life of your dreams.
And never stop learning, growing, and striving for financial abundance.
This has been The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time for another insightful exploration.